There are rumors that Dave Roberts might become the highest paid manager in baseball history soon. He'd probably deserve it. We'll also dig into other relief pitchers after we talked about Tanner Scott yesterday. Who are some other relief pitchers who might be available via free agency or trade? We'll dig into all that. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, for being with us every day. And thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Thursday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. My co-host is Vince Samperio. Vince will be with us momentarily. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And get started we will. Like I said, Vince will be joining me shortly. But the first thing we want to talk about is Dave Roberts. There was a report in the LA Times the other day. I guess it's been, four days ago now. Jack Harris of the LA Times writing about Dave Roberts. This article talked about a few things. One of them is under the header, a new contract for Roberts. And he talks about Craig Counsell, who left the Brewers to take over as manager of the Cubs a year ago. And Counsell got a 5-year contract worth $40 million. And the main difference between Craig Counsell and Dave Roberts is that Dave Roberts has actually accomplished something in his managerial career. And so it makes sense that people are now talking about the possibility of Dave Roberts getting more than that. He is going into the last year of his current contract, and he's not, Walter Alston famously managed 25 years with the Dodgers on a series of 1-year contracts, never had a multi-year contract. That's not how they do things anymore these days. If you like your manager, you don't make him go into a lame duck season, never make him be in the last year of his contract, which ultimately ends up meaning that every manager who gets fired generally gets fired during a contract, and so teams end up eating some money, but that's okay. And that's probably not something that will happen with the Dodgers and Dave Roberts, as I welcome in my co-host, Vince Samperio. Welcome, Vince. I'm just introducing the topic of Dave Roberts and extension. The only saucy thing I've said so far is the main difference between Dave Roberts and Craig Counsell is that Dave Roberts has accomplished something in his managerial career.
Yeah, no lies there. And yeah, for Roberts, you become the best manager in baseball, just based on facts, not based on anything else. And the facts are that Dave Roberts has led his team to the playoffs every year. He's been a manager, he's been division champ every year but one. He's been a manager. He's been in the World Series 4 times now. Won 2 of them. Probably should have won 3 of them. And regardless of everything else, that's almost a Hall of Fame resume in itself right there. And he's in, regardless of how you feel in terms of, anyone can do this and anything else and blah, 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 and all this other stuff, he's done it. So that's all you can really, it doesn't matter all the hypotheticals if he's already been doing it.
Yeah, we often hear, JV coach could take this team to the World Series. But the fact is, the Mets had Buck Showalter and a $1 zillion payroll and didn't do anything with it. The Padres had Bob Melvin. And before that, they had Jay Stingler. And before that, they had whoever else, and spending a lot of money and not succeeding the way the Dodgers have. The Yankees have had high payrolls, haven't won a World Series in 15 years. The fact is, it's not as easy as just, the front office put together a great team. Now the manager can just turn on autopilot and win a World Series. It just doesn't work that way. And for me, the main thing about Dave Roberts is the thing he's the best at in baseball is the thing that can't be taught, which is the people skills. Even one of the things that people hate about him, the fact that you can never get a straight answer from him about an injury. That's because he is a player's manager, and he is the public face, and he is willing to take that criticism. I think the Dodgers organization, both above and below Dave Roberts, all appreciate that he just kind of lets himself be the target for everybody's ire, everybody's anger. Just throw it all at Dave Roberts, and that takes some of the heat off of the people above him, heat off the people below him. We heard, was it Max Muncy was talking about a month or so ago about Dave Roberts and how he will make decisions based on things that he knows are going on in the players' lives, and he will just take the heat and just, knowing people are going to say I'm an idiot for this, and I don't care.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, even last year, I think more specific now that we get a lot more, reactions on social media and everything else, is Roberts, for me, is at the point where when a decision is questionably made, wait till we get an answer about it, because Dave Roberts is not going to actively put the team in a bad situation most of the time. Probably, in the 90%, 95% of the time, he's not going to actively put the team in a bad situation because he wants to or because he's making bad decisions. Most of the time, it's because, hey, we didn't want this guy to go 3 days in a row. Hey, this guy's gone for the last 5 days, or something else that we don't even know. Hey, this guy's kid is sick and, no one knows yet, but I know. And, I don't want to put him out there in a situation that, could impact him negatively or whatever the case is. And most of the time we get those answers in some form after the game. And, usually by the time we're doing the podcast in the post-game situation, he's already addressed the biggest, questions or gripes that we have for the most part. But yeah, I think for the Dodger team to have had as many superstars and guys that are maybe playing roles lower than they could be on other teams, and guys playing out of position or out of whatever, or moving up and down between OKC and the Dodgers and everything else, for there to be no public complaints about that, by anyone, like you would assume there'd have to be somebody that would be angry enough about something with Roberts that would have been publicly out there yet, and we haven't seen it yet. And that's more of a credit to him than a lot of this other stuff.
Yeah, and not just that, but people actively seeking out to play for him. Like that, he is one of the attractions of playing for the Dodgers, getting to play for Dave Roberts. Actually, interesting comment here in the chat from Chilltown All-Star that he says his manager of the bullpen in the postseason was masterful. His decision to leave Treinen in the eighth was huge. I think most managers would have pulled Treinen in that moment. Funny thing, as much as a Dave Roberts fan as I am, I actually think he gets too much credit for that decision because I don't know that he really had any other options. And so, for me, I feel like Dave Roberts walked out to the mound just hoping and praying that Blake Treinen would tell him, yes, I want to stay in, because he's like, well, I don't really have any other options. So, still what he did, I think even for Treinen, I don't think Treinen is thinking in that moment, he has to leave me in because he has no other options. And so, the show of confidence and everything, I think Dave Roberts handled that very well, but I also think he didn't have any other options. Blake Treinen was staying in that game whether we wanted to or not.
Yeah. I mean, that situation, but even just going out there and whatever it is, whether it's word spoken or, a fake vote of whatever it was, there's little things like that don't always get the credit. And, there's obviously a lot of decisions he's made in the past that, get a lot of the scorn, and, some of those rightfully so. We've criticized him here when we don't agree with things. Mostly, 2019 for sure is probably the biggest one. And then there's more individual things here and there that kind of happen. But I think the biggest question, and we put out the question before, like, if you don't want Dave Roberts managing the Dodgers, who do you want? And, nobody was able or wanted to make a case for anybody else other than just shouting their name or throwing their name in a comment or whatever else. Like there might be other people out there that for sure can handle it in the same way. But at this point, there's nobody better.
Nobody proven.
Yeah. Nobody proven better at this point. In all aspects. There might be one thing, if you think somebody's better at bullpen management than he is, that may be true, but he's probably not better at being a player, getting the players to buy in to certain things, or getting, making sure that nobody's upset when their playing time is not what they want, or they're moving up and down between OKC, or they could be a fifth starter on another team, but they're, a bullpen guy over here. Like, there's different things to go about it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to an extension for Roberts, it's going to happen because they're not going to let him go into his last year of a contract. And chances are it's going to be the most lucrative manager contract in history. And that's the way a team like the Dodgers should be spending their money. When you have the best manager, do this thing that doesn't count against the luxury tax, doesn't count against any payroll, anything like that. It's just, it's just money. And so give Dave Roberts all of it. And so we're probably going to see a 6-year and, $55 million contract, something like that. And he's going to deserve every penny of it. Hopefully win us 6 more World Series titles during that time.
Yeah, why not?
Yep. EB says Joe Madden or Mike Scioscia, which I think I could guess.
I hope those are jokes.
I think I could guess within a year and a half how old EB is based on those suggestions.
Yeah.
We're going to come back in a minute. I think that's the end of our Dave Roberts talk. After yesterday's conversation about Tanner Scott, we are going to dig into some other bullpen options, first on the free agent market and then on the trade market. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up that $5 W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, and how many points each team will score. Lots of thrilling options. But when you're just looking for that $5 bonus bet or $5 win to get your bonus bets, go with something simple like who's going to win the darn game. And right now, if you look at this weekend, currently the Ravens are minus 4,000 favorites over the Cleveland Browns. You got the Falcons at minus 420 over the Panthers. Packers at minus 550 over the Bears. Lots of, the Bucks at minus 900 over the Saints. So a lot of options where it looks like you could guess pretty well who's going to win the game. Put $5 on one of those heavy favorites, and if they win, you will get your $250 in bonus bets. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being here with us live. Remember to go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can text directly with us, get our thoughts on moves and rumors and all of that. And there's now a Discord channel where you can talk with other Locked On Dodgers insiders. It's a lot of fun over there. So check that out. Also checked out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And for your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. So, Vince, we talked about Tanner Scott yesterday and his reported asking price that he's not going to get that high probably. But if Tanner Scott does price himself out of the Dodgers market, there are other relief pitchers available on the free agent market that could be interesting. And so we thought we'd talk about a couple of them. The two who jumped to my mind immediately, and maybe there's others who jumped to your mind first, are Jeff Hoffman from the Phillies and Kirby Yates from the Rangers. Anybody else jump to your mind immediately?
Kirby Yates for sure was the one I was thinking of. And after that, nobody that's like game changer. There's a lot of guys that I could see him take like, little flyers on, maybe not minor league deals. But maybe minor league deals. Like, we talked about Paul Sewald before. Like, he was kind of actively campaigning to like pitch for the Dodgers, kind of. I don't know. I'm sure he will get a guaranteed deal somewhere. But for a Dodgers team that, seems somewhat set and has a lot of arms that they have to go through, some of these guys, after Kirby Yates, maybe David Robertson, Tanner Scott, obviously, and Hoffman would be guaranteed guys. The rest would be like, hey, you can come over here, but you're going to have to earn your spot.
Yeah, Sewald was really interesting that he was just kind of nobody asked him about the Dodgers, and he just said, let me talk about the Dodgers and how much I'd love to pitch for the Dodgers. And, Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys who the Dodgers might have to see something in him. And he's been, really good for basically most of the last 4 years, other than because, last year he wasn't really good. Last year he was decent. The year before that, after he came over to the Diamondbacks, he was bad, but he had been really good with the Mariners before that. But then we also know basically all of his good years came in Seattle, where we know from Teoscar Hernandez and others, it's hard to hit there. And so how much of that was just a product of T-Mobile Park, T-Mobile Stadium, T-Mobile
Stadium.
Stadium, what?
Yeah, because it used to be Safeco Field.
Yeah, T-Mobile Park, I think it is. Anyway, that stadium in Seattle, nice stadium, really good for pitchers. And so Seawald would concern me. I guess let's talk about the two big ones then, Hoffman and Yates. Jeff Hoffman is almost 32. He'll be 32 in a few days. Kirby Yates is almost 38. He'll turn 38 right after the season starts. Hoffman bounced around. I remember him with the Rockies. He used to be a starter. He was lousy. But again, some of that could have been pitching in Colorado. Then he went to Cincinnati, which also sucks to pitch in. And then he went to Philadelphia and became good and has been really good the last 2 years. Much higher strikeout rate, better walk rates, better home run rates. You would expect the better home run rates, not getting out of Colorado and Cincinnati, and even just becoming a full-time reliever, which he did, in Cincinnati. But, watching him pitch the last couple of years seems like he's figured something out and strikes me as the kind of guy who could even take that next step with the Dodgers.
Yeah, he's a guy that's interesting. Like I said, 2 really good years with the Phillies, and before that, you kind of throw everything out. He's a guy, I think I read the other day, maybe looking for, 3-13, somewhere in the Clay Holmes area of what he got, even though Holmes was signed to maybe start. So, maybe it might be a bit much there. Personality-wise, I did get to meet him real quick and talk to him a little bit at MLB All-Star, and he seems like a guy that'd be fun, personality-wise, to add to the team. So, it's not someone that I got a bad vibe from, as much as a 5-minute conversation can really give you in a light, fun environment. But yeah, he's a guy that I guess for me, it's one of those, the price would have to be right and he'd have to fall into the Dodgers' laps. I don't think the Dodgers are outwardly pursuing him to the point that they're going to be making bids. I think it's, hey, we're in February and Jeff Hoffman still hasn't been signed, and maybe we can get him on a not cheap, but a good 1-year deal or, an option year or something like that. He makes sense. And same boat for Kirby Yates, but Kirby Yates is probably more likely to take or more susceptible to taking a 1-year deal or a 1-and-1 type deal just because of his age. And, he's kind of done it the last few years.
Yeah. And Kirby Yates is a guy who we remember him with the Padres, obviously, when he was, at times the best relief pitcher in baseball. 2019, he was elite, had a 1.19 ERA and his FIP was 1.30. He was just unhittable. The Dodgers did have at least one good game against him that year. I remember them having a walk-off against him, but that had a lot of walks involved because the Dodgers were one of the few teams that could lay off his splitter when it was out of the zone. But you look at, then he struggled a lot between injuries and ineffectiveness. His next 3 seasons were, first of all, only 11 innings total in those 3 seasons, and they were 11 bad innings. And then he came back in 2023 and started to get back to form, but was walking too many dudes. And then 2024, he kind of put it together, got the walk rate down, still not back down where it was when he was elite, but better than it had been when he was really bad. Strikeout rate was back up, and the home run rate was back down to where it was when he was elite. And so for me, Kirby Yates, he is the perfect candidate for a 1-year deal because, all relievers are volatile. Kirby Yates is even more volatile than most. And so, he's a guy who I'd rather give, if they were going to pay somebody $13 million a year, I'd rather have it be Jeff Hoffman than Kirby Yates, just because I have no idea if Kirby Yates is going to be good in 2025,
Yeah, and that makes sense. Even last year, Kirby Yates' ERA was 1.17, the FIP 2.50, which is still very, very good. But, when you have that kind of variation and you are a reliever and you are a guy that, has come off some injuries, it just doesn't know. But based on, if you need to fill the Daniel Hudson role, Kirby Yates could make a lot of sense. And I think the one or maybe not the one difference, I guess if you get paid, you get paid regardless of if you're a closer or not, but if Jeff Hoffman is maybe looking to be a closer somewhere and get closer money, then that might make less sense. Kirby Yates is a guy who was a closer last year, has been an elite closer before, but at this point in his career, I don't think he's looking to be a closer. I think he's looking to get a good deal and maybe want to win.
Yeah. When you look at Hoffman, he is a guy who, where'd my Hoffman tab go? There it is. He's never been the closer. He's kind of looking at maybe the Brandon Morrow approach of show that you're really good and then get signed as somebody's closer, which is what Brandon Morrow did after pitching 2017 with the Dodgers. Then he signed that 3-year deal to be the Cubs closer. Didn't work out for him health-wise, but that might be the thought process that Hoffman is having. And if that's the case, maybe the Dodgers aren't the right spot for him. But if he's looking, he had 10 saves for the Phillies last year. I think if he came to the Dodgers, he'd probably get about 10 saves, to split up those. You figure the Dodgers are probably going to have 45, 50 saves between all their relievers, probably 10 of those for Hoffman and some for Phillips and some for Kopech and some for Trinan and, some for Vesia and whoever else. I don't know why I ever list Dodgers relievers, just knowing I'm going to forget one of the important ones, but you know what I mean? And so, one of the things I keep coming back to in my mind though, is the fact that the Dodgers, it's not like they need an elite reliever. It's if Tanner Scott is available at the right price, yes, he makes your bullpen better. And the same can be said for Hoffman and Yates, but to a lesser degree. They're not as sure things for 2025 as Tanner Scott is. But they would be probably an improvement. But then you start, the farther down you get, you start getting to, okay, well, what if we just turn Dustin Mann to reliever? What if we just turn Bobby Miller into reliever? Could we get, based on what Jeff Hoffman was as a starter, could we turn Bobby Miller into that? And there's bigger questions about Bobby Miller that we're not going to dig into this episode. But you know what I mean? Like the Dodgers aren't desperate for a reliever,
Yeah, they're not looking just to sign a reliever. If they're going to sign somebody, has to be one of your top 3 arms coming out of the pen, I think, right now. If not, then it just doesn't make as much sense because of what you said with all the guys they have and the fact that, they're pretty good at finding random guys to come in and fill in and be legitimate. So,
yeah, absolutely. EB in the chat asks, I wonder if Brandon Morrow forgives Dave Roberts for overusing him in the 2017 postseason. Yeah, I think he probably forgave him the day that the Cubs gave him $22 million. I think, that's why he got that, because of his performance in 2017, including the postseason. So I think Brandon Morrow has 22 million reasons to not be upset about being overused in that postseason. Free agency isn't the only way to build a team. There's also the trade market. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some elite relievers who could possibly be available via trade. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I love sports. I love concerts. I love comedy shows. The thing they all have in common is buying tickets. And that means the other thing they have in common is you can find the best price on Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You also have the option of turning on all-in pricing, which will show you the total prices up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And with the Game Time guarantee, you'll always get the lowest price, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to your favorite events with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We are back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thanks to our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. You can make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. Also, be sure to go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers to become a Locked On Dodgers insider. Check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So when we're talking about potential relievers, and like we were just saying at the end of that segment, Vince, Dodgers aren't necessarily looking for just a reliever, but if an elite reliever were to become available, I think they'd be interested. And there are some elite relievers in Major League Baseball who could potentially be on the trade market, either because their teams are going nowhere, like in the case of Ryan Helsley, or because their teams are notoriously anti-paying money to players like Emmanuel Clase or Yohan Duran, maybe from the Twins. Those are a few names when we started talking. You and I were talking about potential trade guys. Those are three names that came to my mind. And for me, I feel like if the Dodgers were going to trade for a reliever, it would probably need to be somebody up near that level. You know, those guys are like legit elite relief pitchers.
Yeah, like I said, it's got to be a top 3 arm out of the pen for the Dodgers to even consider making a move, especially if it's going to come to trade and giving up, I guess something of value, and regardless of what kind of value it is. But Helsley's obviously a guy that is out there on the market in the sense of the Cardinals could be looking to rebuild, retool, whatever it is. We've heard people try to attach him to an Arenado deal. Arenado still doesn't make sense to the Dodgers for me anyway, so I wouldn't see that. But Helsley would make sense. He's a guy that would slide into the closer role, and everyone else would kind of fall under that, at least until he lost it. If that was the case, if they were to get after him, and I don't think it would cost too much. I think he only has 1 year left on team control, so it wouldn't be anything that'd be too costly. The Dodgers do have some guys they can move off of that the Cardinals might be interested in, that are either close to the big leagues, already played in the big leagues, or something of that nature. Or they do have some young guys that are more flyer types that maybe the Cardinals would be into. So it would make sense there. For Clase, he's relatively cheap for what a elite closer is these days. I think if we really got into him, you could poke a lot of holes into what Clase does and why he may not be built to be a closer that elite for a long time. But, he does have a couple $10 million options on the deal that he has. And, that's relatively cheap for the Dodgers, maybe not as cheap for the Guardians. And that's where that would come into play. And then the Twins, for whatever reason, just can't get out of their own way when it comes to competing. And if John Duran became available, yeah, that's definitely someone the Dodgers would want for sure.
Yeah, and all those guys, they all throw really hard. Clase, we talked about this. There were rumors about him last offseason and maybe also even the offseason before that about the Dodgers possibly trading for him. And the thing has always been like he just doesn't strike out as many guys as you would expect a guy with his stuff to. And yet, even though he only struck out 8 guys every 9 innings last year, he had a 0.61 ERA. And his FIP was 2.22, so it was still like he was legitimately really, really good despite not getting strikeouts because he doesn't give up hits. Limits hard contact for sure, doesn't give up home runs, doesn't walk guys. Ryan Helsley is a guy who throws extremely hard and sometimes has the walk rate that you would expect from a guy who throws really hard. The Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson type. A lot of walks to go with those, a lot of strikeouts. But the funny thing is, in his career, you look, his first 3 years, he was not great. And both his strikeout rate was down and his walk rate was up. And somehow in 2022, he raised his strikeout rate, dropped his walk rate. And since then, the last 3 years, he's been very, very good, elite. And 49 saves last year, led the majors, 241 FIP to go with his 204 ERA. Helsley is a guy I've always been a really big Ryan Helsley fan. I like his stuff, and I feel like it is sustainable for him to stay really good. He's only 30 years old. Definitely for the 1 year that he still remained before he hits free agency. If it was a rental for a reasonable prospect haul, I'd be totally on board with it. And yeah, the Clase and Duran. I like those guys. I for some reason, I don't know why for sure, but I am more on the Helsley train than the other two guys.
Yeah, I think Clase, if you watch the postseason, it's easy to get scared by that. And that's why when we talk about relievers for the Dodgers and not having the strikeout. Like that's the one reason we were a little worried about the Dodgers bullpen last year, was that they didn't necessarily have the guys that got the strikeout stuff, or more so 2023. Last year they got a little bit better in terms of it, but yeah, when you get to the postseason, you're going to face more good hitters, and when you're facing more good hitters and you're not a strikeout pitcher, more things are more likely to happen, like Aaron Judge running into one that goes over the wall, or Giancarlo Stanton going right off over the wall right after that. So, when it goes to guys like that, that might make more sense. Helsley, I think the fact of, okay, you're getting him. If you traded for him, you have him for a year, and if he leaves after that, not a huge deal. And if you can, convince him to sign early, or you just have a step in the door to re-sign someone, then that always helps out. But how likely are a lot of these? Probably not too likely. Like I said, the Dodgers aren't necessarily in the market for it. They are open to it. It's more luxury than anything at this point. They have a lot of good arms and potential arms that could be good bullpen arms, and they're just going to let the market dictate what happens. And, that's the way it should be when you have a team that's already, kind of built, and you have something that's already stable in the sense of a bullpen, and you can, just kind of let the other poor teams decide not to sign players. And then you can be like, okay, well, I guess we'll sign them.
Yeah. And maybe that's why I'm so aboard the Helsley train, is because I think he's the most realistic one to actually get traded. So maybe that's it. Last thing before we go, totally off topic, Vince, something I just came across when I was looking today. I'm going to tell you 3 post All-Star break OPSs in 2024, and you're going to tell me which one belongs to Tommy Edman, which one belongs to Kike Hernandez, and which one belongs to Chris Taylor, okay?
All right.
Post All-Star break OPS, 711, 765, 766. Which one is which?
Well, I'm not going to answer it in the sense of this is going to surprise me. So I'd go Kike in the middle, Taylor the last one, and Edman the first one.
Edman was 711, Taylor 765, Kike 766. Taylor and Kike were almost like equally hitters. Good Englishing, Jeff. Taylor actually had a better batting average and a significantly better on-base percentage than Kike after the All-Star break. A lot less power and a lot fewer plate appearances because he was mostly platooning and pinch hitting at that point in optimal situations. But I was surprised by those numbers just based on my own perception, and so I thought other people might be too.
Yeah, Edman, like I said, Edman's postseason is really carrying what people remember from him last year. He had the hot week when he had like the 5 or 6 homers and a couple, like maybe 1 or 2 hot weeks. But beyond that, he wasn't that great, but you didn't really notice because the Dodgers were kind of rolling at that point.
Yep. And having a 1022 OPS in the NLCS and a 988 OPS in the World Series will win a lot of hearts for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. That'll do it for us for today and for this week. We want to thank you all for being with us every day. If you're not with us every day, you know what? Start being with us every day, or at least add 1 or 2 days a week to your rotation, and eventually you will get to every day. We appreciate all of you. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching and listening right now to make it easier to find us. Also, check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can also go beyond the podcast to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a few bucks a month with a free 14-day trial. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snidog. DMs are open for both of us over there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Have a good one.